Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. I'm Beth. It's reading journal time. We're going to go ahead and check out my reading journal, see what I read in June, do a little bit of a book haul as well. Let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm just going to jump straight to my June tab so we can start talking about what I read this month. And I read a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I've not put in my thoughts about our Grimm read. And I don't know if anybody read this because didn't seem like anybody else wanted to read this story, which is fine. I read a lot of novellas and started running out of space. I had only put in 5 spots for my reading, but then I read a bunch of novellas, so things went quickly. So we're going to have to reevaluate this area for the next month. The first book that I read this month is Shakespeare, The Man Who Pays the Rent, which is marketed as being by Judi Dench. But it is really a series of conversations between Judi Dench and actor-director Brendan O'Hay. In Shakespeare, The Man Who Pays the Rent, Dame Judi Dench takes us on a lively and insightful journey through her 7-decade career in Shakespearean theater. With engaging stories and personal anecdotes, she reveals her process, triumphs, and backstage antics in a series of intimate conversations with Brendan O'Hay. This witty and provocative book serves as her love letter to Shakespeare, filled with humor and honest reflections on her craft. I have not had this good of a time with a book this year. This has jumped straight to the top of my 5-star reads. There is a full review of it on my website. I'll link it down below. I tend to reserve my reviews for books that I really, really love. Otherwise, I just rate them on Goodreads or whatever. But what I actually put on my website are the books that I just adore. And this is one of those books. The first quote that I jotted down, and I had to pull over to the side of the road. So I was listening to the audiobook and dictated into a note for myself really quickly so I wouldn't forget it was, "There's magic to be mined in mistakes." And do you need to know something about Shakespeare in order to enjoy this book? Well, yes. If you're newish here, my degree's in English literature. I know quite a bit about Shakespeare. I have my favorite plays. I have my least favorite plays. As much as I love Shakespeare, Judi Dench is in love with Shakespeare. Her poor husband, Mikey, just having to compete with the bard for the entirety of their life. They even, as a couple, went so far as to purchase property and their home just outside Stratford-upon-Avon, basically so Judi could be nearer to where Shakespeare is buried. The whole thing is delightful. The antics that this crew got into in the theater, and she's in this sweet spot of such a lengthy career between the Laurence Olivier generation and the Kenneth Branagh generation, and she's in there, and so she's acted with both spectrums and across both spectrums. And need we forget that she won an Oscar for 8 minutes of being on screen in Shakespeare in Love. Obviously not a Shakespearean stage experience, but it's certainly adjacent. It's certainly adjacent for playing Queen Elizabeth. I loved everything about it. I loved everything about it. I might listen to it again. I am definitely going to pick up a physical copy of the book, and that's really what I intended to do when I was on a book haul in April, and then the New Bookstore didn't have it because they sold out of it so quickly. And I decided to go ahead and do it on audio. And like Shakespeare is meant to be seen on stage, because this started off as a series of interviews between Judi and Brendan, this is meant to be listened to. It just is. You need to be able to hear the mirth and the joy. And Judi does not narrate the entire book. They bring in another actress, and I can't remember her name right now. Reason being, it was originally meant to be a series of interviews that were given to the Globe Theatre to add to their archives. And then it turned into a book. And at the age of 89 or 90, Judi's eyesight has gotten to the point that she wouldn't have been able to narrate her own parts again for the audiobook. She had a conversation with Brendan. It was recorded, but it wasn't recorded at a quality that an audiobook would be. So they do bring in another actress most of the time. Occasionally, we launch into some soliloquies and things that Judy just recites. She can recite lines that were not even her parts from plays that she hasn't done in 40 years. It's just astonishing. But that actress sounds so much like her that you would just never know. You would just never know. And if you like Shakespeare even a little bit, if you love Judi Dench like I do, you do need to check out this book. It was just my favorite. Certainly nonfiction. Obviously, it's a memoir. And it was just my favorite thing that I've read so far this year. Moving on from that, and I got a wild hair. I decided to read The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. Now, I've not necessarily ever been drawn to any of Leigh Bardugo's books. I really got pulled into this one thinking about being one of those religious trauma girlies that I am. And kind of thought that's why I'm going to go ahead. And it being a fantasy, I'm going to go ahead and jump into this. In The Familiar, Leigh Bardugo transports us to the Spanish Golden Age, where Lucia Collado, a lowly servant, hides her magical talents to survive. When her mistress discovers her abilities, Lucia is thrust into a perilous game with the disgraced Antonio Perez, who seeks to regain the king's favor. Navigating a world of seers, alchemists, and danger, Lucia must use her wits and team up with an immortal familiar to escape the deadly threats of the Inquisition. Now, this being my first Leigh Bardugo, and her being a booktube darling, I was a little disappointed. The Familiar is fine. It's an okay book. It's not bad. It's not terrible. It's just fine. It's very generic, which is like the kiss of death, I guess, in books. And it just could have been, it's 387 pages. It could have benefited from another 200. And I don't say that lightly. I realize how chunky of a book that would make it. But this Spanish Golden Age, the time of the Spanish Inquisition, the entire world should have felt so much more rich with atmosphere. The characters, the magic system is hinky at best. It's just okay. It's just okay. The writing is beautiful, but the characters needed more and the world needed more. And because of that, I gave it a 3-star, put it right in the middle. And I don't know that I'll backtrack and pick up any of Leigh Bardugo's books. I like quotes about words, and so language creates possibility, sometimes by being used, sometimes by being kept secret. I mined out of it some moments. I was able to pull out some bits that I really appreciated, but in here I was like, with a rich, vibrant, and horrible time period that was the Spanish Inquisition, where is it? Like, where is that atmosphere? Where is that dread? There's mention of dread. There is one, we do need to talk about trigger warnings. There is a waterboarding scene in this book that kind of took me by surprise. There is religious trauma, so those sorts of things, but even they don't read quite as terrifying as you would necessarily want them to. It's just very blah. Okay, moving on. And I jumped to yet something else that was radically different. And that was picking up The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which was my first Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now, I have watched Daisy Jones and the Six. I did watch the television show. I quite liked it a whole lot, but it didn't make me want to pick up the book. I was like, ooh, that was a great television show. I don't think I need to read the book, but I've always been curious about 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. In The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Hollywood legend Evelyn Hugo chooses unknown reporter Monique Grant to tell her life story, leaving Monique puzzled and determined to seize the opportunity. As Evelyn recounts her rise to fame, 7 marriages, and a forbidden love, Monique becomes captivated by the star's tale of ambition and friendship. However, the deeper Evelyn goes, the more Monique realizes that their lives are tragically entwined. Because of course they are. And that was telegraphed in the book. So I don't feel like I'm really giving anything away putting that in my written synopsis. But I can tell you right now, I loved Evelyn Hugo as a character. She is something else. And the first quote I wrote down was, "Never let anyone make you feel ordinary." And that is just a woman who owns herself, right? To be doling out that advice to younger generations. Right now, I have Evelyn Hugo sitting at a 4, but it has stuck with me. I've read a lot since then, this month, and it stuck with me. I'm still thinking about Evelyn Hugo, and I like that. So this might get bumped up to a 4.5, maybe even a 5. But right now, Evelyn Hugo is sitting at a 4. I put in here that I was so very grateful that the twists really weren't twists. We see them coming. This is vital because this isn't a story about the aha moments. It's a story about living life, the overall journey, and how we react to the choices we have made. It's a beautiful thing. So yeah, that's how I felt about 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. And then I started down a Murderbot rabbit hole, and I can't get out because I'm in love with Murderbot. So the next book that I read is All Systems Red by Martha Wells. In All Systems Red, we follow a self-aware security android who calls itself Murderbot, as it reluctantly protects a group of scientists on a distant planet. Preferring to binge-watch entertainment feeds rather than interact with humans. Sometimes me too, Murderbot. Murderbot's plans for a quiet life are thwarted when their mission goes dangerously wrong. Forced into action, it must confront its past and the sinister threats that lie ahead. And you see, I wrote, I love Murderbot. I do. Now, I can see why the introverts of the internet like Murderbot, because Murderbot is an introvert of the internet. And I am a raging extrovert of the internet. And I didn't necessarily think that I would connect with Murderbot like I did. And yet I've decided the timing was kind of perfect. And I've mentioned this in a Plan With Me video. Like, I do live with bipolar disorder. I am leaning into a depression. My doctor and I have realized my medication's being changed to try to counteract that. So while I am an extrovert who loves people, I'm also someone who lives with depression. And Murderbot is clearly a Sekbot that is grappling with some depression issues, I have to say. This is the first novella in the Murderbot Diaries. This is your public service announcement that if you've had any interest in reading these, they are on the Audible free catalog that are included if you have a subscription. The reason I had not gotten into Murderbot yet, even though having great interest in doing so, is that the novellas cost the same amount as a full-size book. And so $20 for All Systems Red, $20 for the next one, $20 for the next one, $20 for the next one. There's a full-length book in there as well. And we're up to 7 of these things. 6 of them, the first 6 are on the Audible catalog. And that's where I'm binging them. I can't stop. So we might as well move on, because the next thing that I read was Artificial Condition by Martha Wells. In Artificial Condition, Murderbot continues its quest for self-discovery, returning to the mining facility where it first went rogue. Along the way, it teams up with a research transport bot named Art. Art is a brilliant character, forming an unlikely partnership. As Murderbot uncovers disturbing truths about its past, it must navigate new dangers and confront its own identity. I put Artificial Condition at 4.5 stars. It's not quite at a 5 for me. I didn't quite love it as much as I did All Systems Red. I did love Art, though. When it comes to AI relationship with AI, there's Murderbot's relationships with humans. Then there's Murderbot's relationship with other bots. Bots that fly spaceships. Bots that are sex bots. Bots that do other things. And it's always interesting to see those interactions. Sometimes Murderbot is really derogatory about some of its own bot species because of how much intelligence they've been given, and that sometimes they're very basic and childlike. And then he meets this Art character who pretty much has Murderbot out-thought, out-intelligenced. It's smarter. but it's just a delightful character. I gave the second installment of Murderbot Diaries 4.5 stars. Let's just move on to the third, which is Rogue Protocol. In Rogue Protocol, Murderbot's journey for answers takes it to an abandoned terraforming facility. Seeking evidence against the corrupt corporation Greycris, Murderbot finds itself protecting a group of humans once again. As it uncovers more secrets and faces new threats, Murderbot grapples with its evolving sense of autonomy and purpose. Some of these quotes, I hate it when I leak. I'm a human. That's not crying, but I read that as a human because I hate to cry. I will do everything in my power to not shed a tear. It's just one of those things that I grapple with on a regular basis. And I was like, me too, Murderbot. Me too. And then I needed to have an emotion in private. Me too, Murderbot. I flailed mentally. Absolutely. Yeah, we all do. Those are some of the quotes from the book that just struck home for me, including pretending bad things aren't happening is not a great survival strategy. No, it's not. And some of that seems like common sense, right? But when it is molded into the stories that Martha Wells writes, all within this same world, all centering around this Murderbot, could it have been just one long novel? Probably, but it would have lost its charm. Something would have been lost somewhere in the way. The novellas are just the way to go for me in these books, because they're just some of the best short stories I've ever read in my entire life, particularly in science fiction. So let's just round that out and say that I've crossed the halfway point, because this is the fourth one. So I also read Exit Strategy. I just finished it. I haven't had time to finish putting in my quotes. I haven't had time to I just finished it like 30 minutes before filming this. I was like, am I going to finish that today and sneak it into June? And I did. So I do need to come in here and add some more information. But Exit Strategy by Martha Wells. In this one, Murderbot races to save Dr. Mensa, who's a character from All Systems Red, the first book, from the clutches of a dangerous corporation. Again, that corporation is Greycris. As it reunites with human allies, Murderbot must navigate intense confrontations and deadly threats. This sees Murderbot facing its biggest challenge yet, ultimately deciding what freedom and loyalty truly mean. And I have given Exit Strategy 5 stars, so we're back up to 5 stars. So I gave the first one 5 stars, the second one 4.5, the third one 4, the fourth one 5. So we'll see what 5, 6, and 7 come out to be, because while 1 through 6 are in the Audible catalog and free and available, 7, the newest one, is not. I've already bought it on audio. The same person narrates all of them, and he's great. He's absolutely phenomenal. And of course, they are short. Exit Strategy is 172 pages, so they are novellas. They are not full-length novels. But Martha Wells just does such a great job of developing atmosphere and characters that are rich and amazing. And it has all the things that The Familiar, which is much longer, lacks in just this little short story. And so that was the difference there between a book that has the atmosphere and character development that you look for and a richness that you look for in order to really enjoy something, and something like The Familiar for me, which was just an okay read, and I'm probably going to forget it in 2 or 3 months. That's where we're at. Okay, before I do the book haul, let's set up for July. Did I skip more than one page? Now that I use Tomo River paper in my common planner for my daily planning, the 160 GSM paper from Journal just feels so heavy that I always feel like there are pages glued together, and there's not. I'm going to go ahead and turn this. I have this floral washi tape that we're just going to use to wallpaper. If I can get it up. Okay, there we go. Just to wallpaper this page. This one's got a little bit of purple in it. I did buy some more wider washi tapes that had some floral and some gilding just to put in these fairy tale pages for the rest of the year. Okay, so the White Snake. In the White Snake, we have a servant who gets nosy about this dish that is served to his king every day. He gets nosy enough to check it out. And under the cloche of the dish, he finds a snake, a white snake. So he takes a bite. It's not his, but he got curious enough to take a bite and see what the deal is. It gives him wisdom and understanding of animals. And he uses his newfound abilities to do some different things. He helps find a lost ring and understanding birds. He beats some other challenges with the help of the animals. And then, of course, in typical Grimm fairy tale style, he's managed to parlay this thing into marrying somebody and becoming a royal. Because, I don't know, we're always marrying somebody and becoming a royal. That was the secret of the white snake. He wins the heart of a princess, he secures a happy future, yeah, blah, 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 blah. One of the reasons I like this story is because my children will tell you that my secret power is animal communication. I have conversations with my cats. They understand exactly what I'm saying. I understand what they're saying most of the time. I stop and talk to strange dogs. Even when their owners tell me to be careful, they're like, oh, be careful, he might bite. No, they don't bite me. It's just my superpower. And so here's a Grimm fairy tale about eating a piece of this snake that gives you this gift of animal communication. Now, would I have used this gift in the way that our servant person does? I don't know. I'm convinced already that certain animals, like elephants, I think elephants know the secrets of the universe. And if you ever spend, I keep messing up my background. And if you ever spend a significant amount of time with elephants, you'd probably agree with me. Because there is just something super special about them. There was an article that came out recently. I think I saw it on NPR or Smithsonian, somewhere there. One of the news channels that I follow that is of more interest to me than standard news. Point being, an article came out of the scientists have been studying elephants, and they've determined that elephants call each other by significant names. And I'm like, well, that's not a surprise. I'm glad science can tell us that now, but that's not a surprise. If you ever listen to elephants, they use low rumbles. So soothing, and it's so great to listen to elephants. But they also have a series of basically subsonic rumbles and noises that we can't hear. We can't pick them up, but the elephants can pick them up. And using equipment, they've managed to realize that elephants, like a matriarch, elephants are definitely maternal. So when you see a herd, they will have a matriarch. The bulls are solo creatures, they come and go. But a matriarch will have a particular call or a series of particular calls for different types of action that she wants the herd to take as a whole. And then she'll make even different specific noises when she is talking to a specific herd member. Fascinating stuff. But I've known that my whole life. Didn't need science to tell me that. And that's just because I spent a lot of time with elephants when I was a kid. My favorite thing ever was to be out in the game parks in Kenya on mini safaris. My parents were missionaries, so sometimes we would go to church. And after church, we would go to Nairobi Game Park and just spend the afternoon with the animals. And yes, it was glorious. I really should have just become a tour guide when I graduated high school and not come back to the States. Here we go. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. Anywho, we're alternating again between lesser known Grimm fairy tales like the White Snake and the popular ones. So we're bouncing back to a princess and we're going to do some Rapunzel. Here is my version of Rapunzel's tower. This gold braid hanging down. And next month I've already picked. And we're going to have another tower and a different princess that's lesser known. So it'll be the tale of two towers. Not the Lord of the Rings two towers, but just a tale of two towers between July and August. I thought it would make for a fun juxtaposition. I do want to put some blingier bling on here. This is some birds. I thought about cutting them out individually, but now that I'm looking at it, I'm just going to stick it on there. This is gold pet tape stickers. Got them off of Amazon. I don't know how long ago. I've had them for a long time now. We'll put some birds up there. I have damaged the spire to my tower and it doesn't want to stick. And then again, I was gonna cut these out, this plant and this butterfly, but I'm feeling lazy now, so I think I'm just gonna stick it in. Just gonna stick it in. Put that right there. And then I'm gonna put in this gold key. These gold keys just read like fairy tale keys for me. Now, I bought these to go in my common planner setup to match the gold keys in 10,000 Doors of January. Here we go. Okay. Now, what color should I use for Rapunzel? Should I use a purpley color? I grabbed a Amazon Basics dual tip brush pen. I don't think they make these anymore. I've looked because I was going to replenish some of the ones that I have. I was just going to buy a whole nother set and I can't find them. So I don't know if they just weren't selling that well or if they're temporarily out of stock and they'll be back. You never know with Amazon, right? I bought these before I really started investing in Tombow dual brush pens because they were so much cheaper and they've behaved and acted and lasted just as long. Just as long. Okay, so reading for July and then notes down here on Rapunzel. And then I don't think I can match this purple with a dot marker. So I'm just going to do this. But we're not going to skip a row. Just in case it goes down some other crazy, I'm going to read a bunch of novellas moment. We'll just start with that and see what happens. So that I'm not getting all bunched up like we were here. You just never know when you are a mood reader like I am, what direction they're all gonna go. And I have lost my, no, there they are. Thought I had lost these again, and I have lost them multiple times. All right, we're gonna pull off July, and then I'm gonna fold back June just to gauge where I need to stick July. And right about there. Does that work? Yep. There we go. And July is on. Now I have done some updating. We do need to write in here that we're gonna do Rapunzel and her long hair. Stick that back in there. Unfortunately, I read 2 more books that begin with A. So all this one's read in artificial condition. If I run out of space, I'm just gonna have to end up sticking a little flippy so A can extend over B and then you can flip up and C up underneath B. We'll see what happens. I made my index larger this year specifically to counteract that problem, and yet here we are. And then there's exit strategy in the familiar, so I've now checked off E and F on my alphabet challenge. That was helpful. Still have a lot to go. I'm definitely in my sci-fi era. Definitely feeling the sci-fi. Here I have added in a memoir. So there's Shakespeare, the Man Who Pays the Rent. So I put in the book cover for the memoir. I still have 2 more that I need to read to reach my goals. And I still haven't read a classic. And so I'm exploring what classics I want to read. Because if I don't get to the full 6, it's fine. I have grace in that kind of thing. But I should at least read 3. I should at least read a few more. I was way behind on my reading. The novellas have helped me catch up. I'm still a few behind for the year. I'm not quite at half, but we'll see what happens. And then I've been stuck reading other things. So these are my backlist of books that are on my shelves. Bookshelf of yesterday's I read. I've started Nettle and Bone, but then I got so distracted by my sci-fi that I'm enjoying Nettle and Bone on like page 70, which means I only have, 150 pages left? Something like that. Need to finish it. I just need to finish it. But I'm terrible about picking up books that are on my bookshelves. And I have figured out that for 2025, when I set up my journal, I need to do one of these backlists for physical books and one of these backlists for audiobooks that are stuck in one of my audio catalogs. I was doing my Book of the Month books there at the end by audio. That's how I got The Familiar and 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I still have a couple books sitting in there waiting to be listened to, and I have a lot of books that are downloaded into my Audible catalog waiting to be listened to. So I need to create the physical backlist, and I need to create an audio backlist as well. I've added Murderbot. I haven't filled anything in yet. I don't know where that gray marker is. But yeah, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. 5, 6, and 7 I have to go. Book haul, I have written in everything I think I'm about to show you. Physical. Release radar, I haven't added anything to this either. I did catch up how far I am on my Grimm watch. I'm still behind. I should be to here. I'm a season and a half behind. It's all good. All right, so faves for the year. I always talk about how it's too early to put any in. I put in Shakespeare, the Man Who Pays the Rent. I printed myself a little book cover and I stuck it in there because it's definitively one of my favorite books of the year. It's just, it might beat out everything. We'll see. My rating pages. And then again, my book of the month is currently paused. I have The Will of the Many in my Amazon cart, but I haven't bought it yet. We'll see if I buy it. Speaking of buying books, let's talk about what I bought this month, because in May I didn't buy any at all, was because I was on a complete no-buy. This month I was just being very judicious. I wasn't on a hardcore no-buy, I was just being very judicious. The first book I picked up, I bought new, and that is the Bullet Journal Book Club pick for this next quarter, which is Indistractable: How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life. The quarterly focus in Bullet Journal U is focus, and it could not come at a better time for this human, with struggling with a little bit of depression, with struggling at work and the ADHD, and my brain's been all over the place. I've had a really difficult time picking up a physical book and focusing on it. I've had a really difficult time even making it through a television show. My focus and my ability to pay attention right now is all over the place. Maybe this will help. I don't know. We'll find out. I haven't started it yet. I'll probably finish Nettle and Bone and then make this my lunchtime read when I'm at work. I've mentioned it before that we have a bookstore nearby. It's about an hour away, 60 miles away, called Books by the Pound. The guy who runs this store originally started buying books specifically to keep them out of landfills. He was buying them from people who were going to throw them away, and then he was going to recycle them all, which is noble. And he'll tell you in local news articles and stuff, he's not a reader. This is just a thing he decided to do to save the planet. And I am down with that. I think that's great. I have coworkers that have been there. Everybody says it's great. Nobody really gives you the details. So we went on Father's Day because my ex-husband wanted to go. I put it on his radar, and that's what he decided he wanted to do. So up there we went, me, him, both our boys. And it is a warehouse. It's huge. Thumbs up for that. He has a pricing structure on the wall. It's $1.40 or something per pound if you're buying individual books. Where he has a standardized box that's branded that says Books by the Pound. It's a very sizable box. And if you fill that box of any shape or form, it's $35 for the whole box of used books. Like, great. There is some structure. So there are bins of paperbacks that say fantasy, mystery, nonfiction, but then nothing's alphabetized. And part of the problem even there is it's like you're standing on this side of the box or you're standing on this side of the box. Some of the titles are reading one way and some of the titles are reading the other. So you have to stand on one side of the box and try to read the titles that are the right side up for you, or go around and try to read the titles that are... If you're going in looking for something specific, more power to you. You're going to have a really difficult time. As the daughter of a librarian, I was about to break out in hives. And then the hardbacks, he's got several shelves on one side of the store that say male authors. And then on the other side of the store, it says female authors. And it's just hardback after hardback after hardback after hardback. But again, they're not alphabetized in any way, shape, or form. And so you have to look through those popular authors. So like on the female side, every other book is a Danielle Steele book. It's like and then on the male side, you've got the Clive Cusslers and the Sidney Sheldons, and you're looking in between trying to figure out what you want. Point being, I did manage to find some books. The first time I went, because I went twice, it took me a really long time to even find sections that were labeled drama or poetry or classics. It was a whole situation. But I picked up Celebrations, Rituals of Peace and Prayer by Maya Angelou. A huge Maya Angelou fan. Never turned down an opportunity to have her remind me of what humanity should be like. So to that end, I also picked up, and you can see how some of these are just old. I know this is meant to look like a quilt. And then a black woman in the colors are terrible. The dust jacket's probably going to come off. I'm not a fan of dust jackets anyway. The book is much prettier than the dust jacket. And this wouldn't take nothing for my journey now. Those are the two Maya Angelou books that I picked up just out of wild curiosity because I love letters. I have a series on my website of 49 letters that I wanted to write before I turned 50. I did not write them all before I turned 50 this year. They're not going to all get written, but 49 letters. I like letters. I like letter writing. I love reading historical letters. I've read Jane Austen's letters to her sister and that kind of thing. I love letters. This is To the Letter, a celebration of the lost art of letter writing by Simon Garfield. And yeah, I have no idea. Like, it's nonfiction. Look, a letter feels like immortality. See, that's beautiful. I don't know if his writing is beautiful or if it's very academic. We're going to find out at some point. But I picked this one up just out of pure curiosity. And then I decided to go for the banned book. So I've never read The Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie. I've always been curious about what the big deal is. And if you read the synopsis and you're a modern reader, you get a little bit of that Neil Gaiman Good Omens vibes from the synopsis. And I know it's a little more detailed than that. It's also chunky. It's chunky. I could possibly throw this into my classics that I need to read. So we'll find out. And then, talking about ugly dust jackets, the complete short stories of Ernest Hemingway. I'm a fan of Hemingway. My degree from university, it's very definitively English literature leaning. Not American, not just literature in the English language, but British. But I did in high school. We had my junior year, 11th grade, was that Form 3 for Brits? I don't know. He sent us home over a break and we had to pick an author and read 2, 3, 4 works by that author. And then we had to write a 10 to 15 page paper on the author and the author's style, not book reports of what we individually read. I picked Ernest Hemingway, and my determination was that I love his fiction. I don't love so much his nonfiction. I absolutely adore For Whom the Bell Tolls. If you ever want to read a book that is masterfully written in stream of consciousness, read For Whom the Bell Tolls. Hemingway. And short stories, and there's a ton of them in here. There's more short stories than I realized Hemingway had written, so I'm excited about that. There's also some academic exposition and stuff in here as well, so it's not all just straight up short stories. And you can tell that I'm a nerd. After I went with family on Father's Day to the store, I had dinner the following Wednesday with a friend of mine. She was like, I'm around Saturday, let's go check out this store. And I told her, I was like, I've told you. There's really no organization. And she was like, yeah, I know, let's go anyway. And so I decided while I was there that if I saw any books that I already love, and if I have them in paperback, that I would consider for $1 just upgrading this book I love that I have in paperback to a hardback. I do keep a Notion database of my books. I did not in that database specify whether they are paperback, trade paper, hardback. I need to go back and do that if I'm going to be browsing these used bookstores so that I can make that determination. But there's some of them that I know off the top of my head. And one of those is Atonement by Ian McEwan, which is a book that I love. Love the movie too. Don't get me wrong. But I don't necessarily like the paperback with the movie cover. I think it cost me $2 because it's heavier. So for $2 I picked up Ian McEwan's Atonement, and I am replacing the paperback with the hardback. And anytime somebody else convinces me to go to Books by the Pound, that's going to be my job, is to figure out if I can upgrade any books that I already have in paperback. In fact, this cover is making me want to watch it again or read it again. Either one. I don't know. I'm all interested in it again. All right, so that's it for this reading wrap up for June of 2024. We are ready to go for July of 2024. I'm going into July currently in the midst of the 5th Murderbot book, which is Network Effect. And it's the full length one. It's not necessarily just the novella, I think. And then there's a couple of novellas after that one. So yeah, so I'll write that in here. I'll continue with Nettle and Bone. Hopefully finish that this week on my lunch breaks at work. And we're ready to go. Let me know down in the comments below, if you had the power to talk to animals, what would you do with your power? Let me know down in the comments. If you like this video, you know what to do. Please give me a big thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one.